Good day, and thank you so much for joining me on this other episode of your favorite health program, You're in Your Health, at on Equinoxe Radio Multimedia. Today, we are going to be tackling a major health concern, colon cancer, equally known as colorectal cancer. And joining me live in the studio is a gastroenterologist who goes by the name Professor NGATCHU. He is a Professor Theodore NGATCHU. He is a gastroenterologist at the Premier Health Hospital. It's a pleasure having you on the program today.
Thank you very much, Immaculate, for hosting me and for giving me the opportunity to share some information about colorectal cancers.
Exactly. We are talking about colorectal cancer. Tell us more about this type of cancer.
Well, colorectal cancers, like any other cancer, is actually as a result of cells lining the bowel wall growing in a disorderly manner. Now, these cancers, when they grow in a disorderly manner, they start by forming little swellings on the lining of the bowel, which we call polyps. And these polyps, if they remain in place for long enough and the disorder growth continues, they become cancers.
And how long can it get to that stage when it comes to the polyps before becoming a cancer?
Well, so far, research is indicating that it will take about 10 to 15 years for a polyp to grow and then become cancer.
Wow. And is it very common in Cameroon? You have been practicing here and in the United Kingdom for several years. Is colorectal cancer common in Cameroon?
Well, first and foremost, the data in Cameroon is very scarce, but what we are having today, we realize that although colon cancer or colorectal cancer is not as common in Cameroon as it is in Europe, it is actually a common cancer in Cameroon. In fact, colorectal cancers are the 5th most common cancer both in men and in women, and overall is the 7th most common cancer in Cameroon.
And what puts us at risk of suffering with colon cancer? Well,
now, what puts us at risk? There are different risk factors, and I would like to put the risk factors into two main categories. I think we look at the category of risks that we can change and risks that we cannot change. So if I start talking about risks that we cannot change, that is something out of our control. And those risks include our age. We grow old every day, so we can't change that. We know that colon cancer is more common in older people than in younger ones, although in Cameroon we are seeing that colon cancer is occurring at a younger age than we see in Europe. We know that colon cancer is influenced by sex. So in Cameroon, although the data is very scarce, it seems as if there is more colon cancer in men than in women. And worldwide, we know men with colon cancer will die more than women. Other risk factors that we cannot change includes our genes, our family history. There are certain genes that we understand can actually promote the development of colon cancers. And those genes, some of them are inherited, so we inherit them from our parents. Others are genes that undergo changes in our lifetime. So that genetic composition, we can't change them because that's where we're born. There are certain cancers that actually go within families. So if you talk to some families, you will hear, oh, my father died of colon cancer. Particularly in Europe, where we have such information, there are people who will tell you that you go back 3-4 generations and you'll find everybody dying of colon cancers. So it is easy to see that that person is likely to have a gene that causes colon cancer. So in those circumstances, there's a risk that we cannot change. Now, risks that we can change, we know colon cancer is associated with overweight. So people who are obese have a higher risk of colon cancer. That is something we can do something about. So we can actually do things to reduce our weight, and that probably reduces our risk of colon cancers. We know that people with type 2 diabetes seemingly have a higher risk of colon cancer. So better control of their diabetes can also help reduce that risk. We know that smoking contributes to cancers in various areas of your body, mostly recognized in lung cancer, but people who smoke have a higher risk of colon cancer. So that is something we can also cut out of our risk factors. We know that colon cancer is related to diet, diets that are very rich in high fats and processed meats and things like that. Red meat tend to increase your risk of colon cancers. So we can actually modify our diet to actually reduce our risk.
Okay. For those who would like to participate on today's edition of the program, here are the contacts: 670-5470-49. I repeat, 670-5470-49 or 656-622222. 656-622222. Back to you, Professor. We have been talking about colon cancer or colon. We have, let's say, our mothers who may not even understand what colon cancer is or what the colon itself is. Can you please break it down for these mothers to really understand what part where the colon finds itself in our bodies?
Yes, I think that's a very important point, because at times when we communicate things, we need to understand who we are talking to and try to come down to their level. So I'll try and be a bit generic so people of different understanding could get what I'm trying to say now. We know that when we eat food through the mouth. Now that food in your mouth goes into your gullet and then into the stomach. And from the stomach, it goes into the intestines. Now in the intestines, there are two parts. There is a small intestine and a large intestine. The small intestine is the first part of the intestine, and that is where the food gets into. That is where most of the digestion happens. That is where most of the nutrients from the food get absorbed into your body. The large intestine, which commonly people call bowels, is the second part of the intestine. And that area of the intestine, no digestion actually happens in that area, but it is the area where the water is taken out of the food we eat and absorbed into the body. So when the food gets into the large intestine, it is liquid part, and then that liquid gets dried up to form the solid stool that we pass. So the large intestine is where the stool that we pass is made. It's the last part of the bowel, and the large intestine has got its own divisions, of which the last part of it, before you get to the anus, is called the rectum. So colon cancer is any cancer in this last part of the bowel, and rectal cancer is a cancer in that last part of the large bowel.
Now, let's look at when it comes to screening, in as much as it's not very common in Cameroon, how often should we get screened for colon cancer?
Now, when we talk about screening, I think there are various things that we really need to look into. Like I said earlier on, colon cancer in Cameroon is becoming more common, is becoming a public health concern. And when things become a public health concern, we start looking at how do we prevent it from actually causing serious problems, complications, and death. And that is when it becomes public health. Now, the screening is supposed to be part of our public health with regards to colon cancer. In screening, what we are trying to do is we are trying to identify the cancer before it actually causes symptoms. So for colon cancer, what we want to do is to identify the cancer when it is still a small growth, what that we call polyp. That is not yet cancer. And when we identify that, we remove it. But equally, we can also identify cancers in the early stages so that we can actually treat them, and treatment in the early stages can provide a cure for this cancer. So cancers can be cured, and colon cancer is one of those if picked up early. Now, screening programs, what you want to do, because you want a test that is very sensitive, so it will pick up almost everybody who has the problem, but will also pick up many people who don't have the problem. So you want a test that is very sensitive, but you also want a test that is also very cheap. So how do we screen for colon cancers? For colon cancers, there are different ways we can screen. Okay, we can screen for colon cancers by doing tests, surrogate tests like stool tests, and we can screen for colon cancers by visual examination, visual testing. So if we do stool test, the common stool test is what we call in Cameroon fecal occult blood. So we're looking for blood in the stool because colon cancers are very noted for producing small amounts of blood in your stool over a long period of time. At times that blood we cannot see, but those tests can actually identify them. The cheaper ones identify various things. It's a chemical reaction, identifies various things that there could be blood in the stool. The more expensive tests identify blood in itself. The cheaper ones are difficult. They cannot distinguish whether the blood is coming from the colon or from the stomach. Like I said earlier on, the whole
we have a call on the line. We'll be coming back to that question.
Sorry?
Please. We have a call on the line. We'll be coming back to that question.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Sorry, due to connection, we couldn't have that caller. But please, whenever you're trying to call to ask your questions, make sure your radio or TV sets are turned off. Back to you, doctor.
Right. Now, as I was saying, the digestive system is a continuous tube. So if there is bleeding from the mouth or from the stomach, it will end up in the colon. So if you do a test in the colon that cannot distinguish the bleeding where it's coming from, it is not a very good test. So some of the blood tests in the stool are not very specific as to whether the blood is coming from the stomach or from the colon. There are other tests that are very specific, still stool tests, the immunochemical testing. They would identify blood that is only coming from the colon. Those are a bit more expensive. But the gold standard of screening is actually the visual test, the colonoscopy. And the colonoscopy is where the doctor takes a camera that is on a very flexible tube and pass it up the anus into the large bowel and have a look directly.
We have another call on the line. We hope it's going to be better. Sorry, connection issues. Please make sure when you're trying to call, your phones or your TV and radio sets are turned off. So it's going to be easy for us to communicate with you. Sorry for that. Yeah.
Yes, as I was saying. Now, the visual test, the colonoscopy, is the gold standard. It is a test that has many advantages. And those advantages include identifying the cause of the bleeding, identifying the cancers in the early stages or even any stage of the cancer, and can actually do something about what is identified. So if during colonoscopy you see a polyp, that polyp can be removed in that early stage, and that reduces the risk of developing cancers because you've already removed what is there. If you see a cancer, if it's in the early stage, you can remove the cancer in the early stage at colonoscopy, and that is treatment of a cancer without needing to have surgery. If you see a cancer in the advanced stage, you can take a sample to confirm and guide the surgeon where the cancer is before they do surgery, so they are very precise where they go and operate. So the colonoscopy has got many advantages. The disadvantages of the colonoscopy is that it's invasive because you have to take bowel preparation, you have to take laxatives to clear the bowel and wash everything, and that can be very challenging for many people.
And is it painful?
Well, I would say colonoscopy technically should not be painful.
Okay.
Yes, if it is done by somebody who is competent, well-trained and skilled, it should not be painful.
Okay. Now let's look at the polyp itself, as you rightly said. How long does it take to treat a polyp, and when it gets to an advanced stage, how long? We currently have a caller on the line. Hello.
Hello.
This will be better. Hello, sir. Oh, madam.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Please, can you turn off your receiver? Can you turn off your radio or TV? Please, I am still insisting. When you're trying to call, turn off your radio or TV sets. It disrupts communication totally. Please, we are begging. Make sure you do that before calling. Thank you. Now, I was talking about the polyp. When it comes to treating the polyp, you said it's treatable.
Yes.
How long does it take to treat a polyp? And when it comes to the advanced stages, is it completely treatable? When we talk about cancer itself, is it completely treatable?
Now, I would like to address that question in different chunks and who is treating the condition.
Okay.
So if we look at polyps, okay, polyps are treated during colonoscopy.
Okay.
So polyps, if they are very small, it takes half a minute.
Oh, wow.
Okay. If they are very large, it could take up to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if the polyp is a cancer and you want to treat the cancer in endoscopy, if it's an early stage cancer, it could take 15 minutes up to an hour. Because the various things that you do during the procedure and the various equipment that you use are different.
Okay.
Now, if the polyp is advanced and needs to have surgery, that is an issue for the surgeon. Okay, the surgeon will tell you how long it will take them to do their procedure, and everything will also depend on the post-operative follow-up. If the cancer is very advanced, usually advanced cancers are not treated endoscopically. Advanced cancers, depending on the stage of advanced disease, might not even be treated surgically. But some cancers can also be treated by a combination of chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and then surgery. So the stage of colon cancer treatment today is very, very advanced. Now, not all of these things can happen in the same environment. You might need to involve different structures, different facilities to get that done. And in our setting, like in Cameroon, a major limiting factor is actually the cost, who is paying, and whether the person has got the money there and then to pay for it. And so that is not a factor that can be ignored.
Okay. So does it mean it's expensive?
Well, now let me put it this way. A colonoscopy with a polypectomy is not expensive. A stool test for identifying colon cancer is cheapest.
Okay.
Surgery is slightly more expensive. Now, if you have to have surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, the cost goes up. Okay. Now, in advanced colon cancers, the cancer could actually spread outside of the colon. So you could have cancer that has spread to the liver and to the lungs. Now, that is not a limiting factor, because a lot of people are very concerned. Colon cancer that is in the liver or in the lungs, people still have a good life expectancy. In very good hands and in good settings, the liver cancers can be removed. So they can cut that cancer, surgery to remove the cancer in the liver. They can do surgery to remove the cancer in the lungs, and the person can still have a normal life following that. Now, if the person is so weak and not very well that surgery becomes a risk, those cancers can actually be treated with radiology. So they can use X-rays to actually coagulate the cancer, and that can kill the cancer and reduce the subsequent damage from the cancers.
From someone who is suffering with the advanced stage, what are some lifestyle changes to make during such a period?
Well, I will start by saying lifestyle changes will depend on where the cancer is, what the cancer is doing, and how it's affecting the person. Okay. So that is where you need to do lifestyle changes. Most importantly, people who have cancers, they should optimize their nutritional status, because if you are malnourished, your body is unable to fight the cancer, and the cancer wins the battle faster. So that's the first step. Now, if you have a colon cancer that is advanced and is causing a blockage of the bowel, most people will advise you to avoid diet that has got high residue. What I would say is, colon cancer that is blocking the bowel, today we can manage that. At colonoscopy, we can identify the cancer and put what I call a stent. So we can put a mesh, like a net, into the bowel that keeps the bowel open and reduce the blockage. Okay.
Yeah. And can it trigger infertility in men or women? Is there a possibility of
now,
that happening?
Colon cancer does not trigger infertility. It's a treatment that triggers infertility.
Oh.
Okay. Now, if somebody has got colon cancer, particularly rectal cancer, okay, because the reproductive organs are actually localized in the pelvis where the rectum is. Treatment of the rectal cancer, either by radiotherapy or surgery, can cause infertility.
And at that point and time when you have been diagnosed with advanced colon cancer, what are some of the foods you need to completely avoid or cut off?
I don't think there's any food you need to avoid or cut off. Yes, a lot of people have this idea that you have to avoid eating X, Y, and Z.
Bread and all of those things?
No, I don't think that's necessary. I think what is important in diet is to have a balanced diet. There are people who should avoid certain things because those things have actually caused illnesses. But a well-balanced diet is what we should always adhere to.
You mentioned red meat as one of the major factors that could result to colon cancer. But then we know meat is rich with proteins, and we have been advised to eat a lot of proteins as one of our, in order to have a balanced diet. So is it that we should reduce the quantity or we should totally avoid meat?
Well, my advice would be to reduce the quantity. I don't think it's a complete abstinence from red meat. I think it's a reduction in the quantity. I think some of the thinking that we have today is that the meats that we have, they are processed meats and the like, and those processed meats can have during the process of production, some of the proteins can actually be transformed into what we call carcinogens, so things that can actually stimulate cancer growth.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation on the program today.
Thank you very much, Magnet.
And I equally want to thank all our viewers and listeners who took part in today's edition of the program. Sorry we're unable to receive some of your calls just because of the fact that you still had your radio and TV set on. But we hope that next week, same time, we'll be having you on the program for you to ask your questions on health-related matters. And my guest today was Professor Theodore NGATCHU. He is a gastroenterologist at the Premier Health Center. He's equally the managing director of that health center. Have a wonderful day in the company of interesting programs on Equinoxe radio and television. I received technical assistance from Jonathan Babula and also Lupego. Have a wonderful evening or good day. Bye-bye.